Tarsus, Turkey, because my father was head of the railroad station in Tarsus, diverted a train loaded with Armenians by alerting by wireless then of what their intentions outcome would be, a continuation of the Armenian massacre. The city that was often mentioned was Adana, A-D-A-N-A. A study of the Armenian massacre should throw more light on this subject. The Turkish officials in Tarsus heard what my father did and advised him to pack up the family and leave the country. Their lives were in danger. Remember Uncle Henry's remarks about the hospitality of the family in Tarsus. My mother and father played host to many Turkish dignitaries in high office. They stayed over in our house overnight and in transit to another destination. The family was well liked and hence spared the consequence of action that was contrary to the government's position. Also, there began a persecution of Christians. It seems typical when a country suffers military defeat and economic hardships, it strikes out at non-natives as the excuse for their predicament. And I remember when I must have been very, very young. Overland, my father and mother, brother, Albert number 1, sister and I, they abandoned the farm and by railroad went to the seaport of Messina, Mediterranean, and departed between the 19th of June and July the 30th, 1920. And picked up a boat to Cyprus. From there they were headed to join Uncle Henry, Uncle Alex, etc. family in the U.S. Now Uncle Henry and Uncle Alex must have had other members of the family. Fleeing from oppression and reaching the American shores was a great blessing for my father. I heard he kissed the ground. On the other hand, my mother was terribly unhappy, leaving her family and coming to a strange country. My father's age, I believe, recorded 42 years old. And Grandma was about 10 years younger. Economically, when they fled Turkey, they came with only what they could carry. Everything else was confiscated, land and all. Under these economic circumstances, they were compelled to start up living with uncles, a situation even Uncle Henry admitted was intolerable. Eventually, they moved out to live in an apartment on Henry Street, Brooklyn. It was here that my brother was killed. The area was in a short distance from the Syrian food stores along Atlantic Avenue. My father's first job was as a sweeper in Woolworth, 5 and 10. Uncle Gus lived with us and paid board. He worked at odd jobs, finally learned tailoring, I believe from uncle to fear. And the traumatic experience my mother and father must have suffered inequality of life. Home, farm, and servants must have been unbearable. My mother could not adjust. My father, for a short time, worked with my uncles in the linen business, but could not economically care for the family. Aunt Stella and Uncle Gabe finally came to the United States. and lived with us. Both worked and contributed board, which was nominal.
Hold on.
My mother and Aunt Stella expertise in sewing was a result of training from French nuns. Lebanon was a mandate of France. You got that there?
Yeah.
Hey, Greg, have you seen this written copy before?
No, this is all new to me.
So where did this come from, this written copy, Dad?
You had these notes.
You had these notes?
He put it together.
I put it together.
How long ago?
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
God, 60 years ago, just contributing to her illness and maladjustment, members of the family were caught up with the overflight of difficulties as a consequence of Angel suffered. My mother was lost without her children and Aunt Stella. There's a lesson to be learned here about changing, quote, changing too. My mother took in homework, sewing for years. She did this making $1 to $1.50 a day, working through the night. We moved from Henry Street, downtown Brooklyn, when my brother died, to Sunset Park area in Brooklyn. It was here that I attended public school number 169. And Angel attended there too. The tragic life of Aunt Angel was heart-rending. And Angel suffered and was a lefty, and the school system at the time not only did not know how to help her, but made matters worse. Emotionally, she was dominated by my mother, not knowing the damage being done to an Angel. And Angel was considered a problem child. On a number of occasions, she was left back in school. Her emotional state reflected the unsettling condition of the family. I wondered that what would have happened with her mental health state if we did not come to the U.S. With the help of your mother, I tried to help Aunt Angel. We persuaded her to get psychiatric treatment. We invited Aunt Angel on vacations with us. She always enjoyed this, and Angel loved you guys. Finally, she was able to live on a relatively even keel, working with Uncle Gus in Leonia tailoring. She was extremely competent at this work. With a little more understanding and guidance, and Angel's life would have been dramatically turned around if only the family understood what was happening to her. Aunt Stella came to the United States with Uncle Gabe. She was my mother's stepsister. She was 13 years old. Seeking employment, she lied about her age and went to work as a seamstress at Bergdorf Goodman. Her French background and French school in needlework qualified her for employment at Bergdorf Goodman, B&G. During her employment there, she went to school at night and started sketching. As a boy of 7 or 8, I remember her sketches. She later became assistant to Bernard Newman, who was the designer of ladies' fashion at B&G. Bernard Newman left B&G, opened the shop in L.A., and persuaded Aunt Stella to join him.
Hold it.
Aunt Stella loved him, but also saw the opportunities to leave a very unhappy situation in Brooklyn. She loved my mother dearly, knowing that we needed financial assistance. She continued to regularly send my mother money. My mother and father were very grateful. Bernard Newman was unsuccessful in his shop. He went to Immigrant, and Stella went with him. He finally left Immigrant for Hollywood, where he designed for a number of pictures. The musical Roberta, I Can't Have Happen Here in It can't happen here. That's with Clark Gable. He tried to get Aunt Stella to join him, but in evaluating the situation, she decided to stay at Magnet. There she made her mark, and as the clippings on file show clearly, her individuality was expressed in her talent, her command of languages, French, Greek. With these assets, she met very famous people, as well as many stars. Uncle Gabe was a good soul. He was in close relationship with the family. He became a peddler selling embroideries, always had, I don't know what that is. Uncle Gabe never made any money, but was always attentive to my mother and father's, taking them in to church on, taking them to church on Sundays, etc. To a degree, he treated me like a son. Uncle Gabe would go to Madison every summer to knock on the doors of the homes of wealthy people to try and sell them merchandise. Uncle Alex and Uncle Henry and Uncle Nick, Aunt Mary, as you remember, had the house in Madison. Madison became the springboard to visit other resort towns, going as far as Rhode Island. Peddling was competitive. The resorts were overwhelmed by the number of peddlers, all trying to be the first to make the big sale. I was sent against my wishes to Madison, at times to live with uncles and also with Uncle Gabe. The purpose was twofold: to get me out of Brooklyn and the opportunity for me to peddle too. My age was approximately 10 years old.
You said I missed the part at the beginning. This was during the summer months.
Was that?
This was during the summer months, right? During the
I
summer,
was going to school in Brooklyn,
right?
so the summer months were the vacation months.
So you really didn't get much of a vacation. You went up there.
My age was approximately 10, and you can see me in the photos. This went on for a number of years. There were times I stayed with uncles and times I stayed with Uncle Gabe at a rooming house. For about 6 years I peddled. Woven Indian baskets, men's neckties, ladies' stockings. I used to run and hide. I was terribly unhappy. I was separated from my friends, sent to live with older relatives in Madison that had many problems and were unhappy. My father frequently wrote me letters to work hard, send money home. I was bewildered. I just wanted to hide. At times, especially selling ladies' stockings, I was terribly embarrassed. You'll notice photos of me and woolen knickers and socks in the album. Many years later, on therapy, I learned the aim of having large families was to have enough children to support the one who was old. That was the security. For immigrants, it was a struggle. It was more difficult for my family because my father came here when he was over 40 years of age. Expectation was not high. Survival was the goal. Solace came from the church. St. Nicholas Cathedral played an important role in comforting the immigrants as other nationalities, opening the halls for entertainment. My mother and father were active in church. I became an altar boy, as is the case today. There were sincere priests and priests that should have been dismissed. From a religious point of view, my very background was very traditional. God is watchman. Sin, fear, punishment, and for one's action. My mother always taught that one should be kind to one another, that we are all equal, etc. Between religions, however, the keen competition existed. Arabic-speaking Christians were split. Greek Orthodox and Roman Catholic. There was a strong competition feeling towards one another. This was very perplexing to me. Uncle Gus got me to join the DMLA, Young Boys of the Masons. One of my friends' father had him join too. Before the year was up, I had to quit. I couldn't cope with the secret handshakes and the separation. From other kids. As I mentioned, the main emphasis was survival economically. My mother doing sewing through the night. My father tried to peddle groceries, coffee, wheat germs, oil, etc. from a suitcase. I used to carry the suitcase. It was so heavy. He used to visit my well-to-do friend's family. I must have been 13 or 14 years old then. Through my hope to do business, he did do some. Was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed and wanted to hide. My father didn't keep at this work too long, carrying a suitcase, walking blocks and blocks was just too much. In the end, because of age and the enormous difficulty, he was very discouraged and he was compelled to give up. The little economic help came from small board payments from Uncle Gus and Uncle Gabe, Aunt Stella, and my mother's sewing. Everything was bought on the installment plan. Compartment to drop a quarter a day. Without that quarter, we would not have use of the refrigerator. But this was not unusual. Many families had to do this. The refrigerator replaced the Iceman. Installment buying started. There was no sense in belaboring the economic hardship. At PS 169, I was a fast student. I then went to 220 Persian Junior High School. There again, just a fast student. I had never really got into my studies and concentrated. I needed physical exertion. It was athletics that helped me forget the problems. I played JV ball and varsity and on to Erasmus High School. Repeating the athletic activities, I was a fair ball player. Athletics to me was competitive. I enjoyed it. And winning was good, but if we lost, I never bothered me much. The unpleasant part of my growing up, the need for money at home. Summers I was in Madison, and during the school days, I was always gotten a job in the afternoon in the neighborhood drugstores, gluing paper instructions on the bottles, delivering prescriptions. then working with Uncle Gus and a novelty importing in New York. And right after school, I would take the BMT to 23rd Street, New York, and work with Uncle Gus, then return home with him at night. Time for studies? I must have been 14 years old. Uncle Gus got me work at a tailor shop Friday afternoons and all day Saturday to press men's clothes. I made my spending money $1.50. Talked about child labor, graduating high school, and Alice, Uncle Charlie's mother, one of the woman she had made clothes. Her husband was a stockbroker in Wall Street. I got a job as a runner on Wall Street at $15 a week. I tried to further my education at night school, but I was distracted. As years passed, while the economic situation did not improve, I was constantly reminded that since my father was unable to work, it was hard of the family. This kind of indoctrination of guilt continued throughout my school days. Angel tried as best she could to help economically. She used to help my mother with the sewing. She was competent with the needle. But had no confidence to go and seek a job. She felt so insecure and scared. Poor Angel. I think that was the last page. Oh no, one more page in there. Graduation high school. Could you hear the last couple pages?
Yeah, we can hear it.
Graduating high school through the help of Charlie's mother, I got a job as a runner on Wall Street for $15 a week. That's 1939. 2 years later, I was making $12 a week. The brokerage house was cutting back. I tried to further my education by going at night school at NYU. The business courses I took hope would help me advance myself in the brokerage house, G.C. Murphy and Company. It appeared to me at the time working there was a dead end, just as in grammar school and high school. I had a difficult time concentrating on my studies. The problems at home seemed so insurmountable, and Stella left to California. Uncle Gabe had difficulty in making a living peddling. Uncle Gus worked, but his contribution was minimal. My father's immigration to America at the age of 50 put him at a great disadvantage. Finally, he had to give up. It was then that the Middle East mentality showed itself. At the age of 18, I was constantly reminded I was the head of the family. It was there for me to assume. Albert was 5 years younger. I always felt that burden of guilt. Later I learned to understand why my family felt the need to place this burden on me. Insecurity plays havoc in people's lives. My family suffered. I was overwhelmed with the feelings of personal responsibility for their well-being. While my friends were free to spend money and socialize, my opportunities were so limited. My ability at athletics gave me some recognition. Among the Lebanese people, I was considered good, socializing, and being invited by society at the time was passed on economic position of the family. I must admit that mental attitude, and an ability to spend money, as my friends were able to do, discouraged me from participating actively with the boys and girls of my age. It's not that I was not approached. I was not a bad-looking guy. I just did not feel confident of my studies, my status. I was in a mental rut. I left my job in Wall Street to work with my uncles, hoping I would get the business going. I sold some merchandise to fine stores, had a full-page New York Times ad with Lord & Taylor at their expense, and since the high-priced linens were on memorandum. However, both Uncle and Alex and Henry were old and were reluctant to really get involved with the wholesale level. They wanted to continue the peddling. I was 21 years old. The business could have worked if only they recognized the opportunities to buy and sell at the wholesale level. My family were furious because my youth and energy was not adequately compensated. They needed more money. In the meantime, the world situation was getting worse. Our country was gearing for a military buildup. Ammunition factories were being set up. My cousin Paul was a government inspector in the War Department. He got me a job in one of the plants to work as an apprentice on a machine. Little did I know what I was doing. I was making 67.5 cents per hour, working day and night. Ironically, it was at this work that I was able to help to pay the debts and live with less stress. The draft was finally instituted, and since I was supporting the family, I was exempt at the time. After 2 years or so, Albert joined the Navy in the student officers learning program, where our country was finally got into war. On a full scale, the demand for additional manpower was increased. And when my number was called, my family was hysterical. My mother falling on the floor crying and banging her head. This type of action put me in a mental state of shock. While I was in the service, I was called who was to take care of my mother and my father. Physically and economically, I was not in a mental state to go with the service. And when I went for a hearing, my case was heard, and the board felt that I was not fit to go in. They were not going to take any chances with me from the point of view I had a breakdown. I was classified 4F. And when I left the hearing, I was in total state of shock, depressed. I spoke with my friend George Zeru, who was a doctor at the time, about it. Then the turning point in my life came. I was instructed by the military to go for psychotherapy at Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn. It was then I began to learn what was happening to me, why I was feeling the way I did. Although at one point, a year later, I offered to go into the Navy. The doctor did not feel I was ready. The first psychiatrist was helpful, but it was only after I went in to deep therapy with enough psychiatrists after I got married that I really began to understand feelings about blaming myself, my family. This made me aware and understand my background and what had happened to me, what led to my distress, and from that understanding, coping. That's a long story, but now I've got to catch my breath. That's that.
Okay.
That's amazing, Dad. Every time I hear that, I'm amazed.
So you can give me that and I can copy those pages. Let's do a Q&A. Is that okay, Doug?
Yep.
Your dad in the Armenian massacre, his contributions to avoiding the massacre, from what you know of the Armenian people, these massacres occurred. This wasn't the only one. There were others of them.
Anybody who was trying to seek freedom in Turkey was executed. And the Armenians had a piece of land there. They wanted their independence.
Of Turkey?
Of Turkey. They were part of Turkey.
Okay.
And they were fighting for their independence. So they in turn put up a big rebellion. And my father working in Turkey because the family had property in Turkey. Along with the Lebanese, they had property in Turkey, and they were producing lots of food and so forth, and they were shipping that food to the Middle East, which included Greece. So with Greece, that's how I got my godfather. He was Greek because my fans, he would come over and visit my parents in Turkey. And when I was ready to be baptized, he was my godfather in Greece. So
Now, you were only...
the family had a big house with servants and all these important Turkish people would come to the house and stay overnight to go in another part of Turkey. You know, stayed overnight and didn't have to
You had
spend
like an
any
inn.
money. Eh?
It was like an inn.
Yeah, that's it,
Yeah.
like an inn. And
Ambassador.
and my father's position in the area was so important that they felt that they should make him station master of the railroad
Okay, okay.
in Tarsus, Turkey.
But he was a farmer, wasn't he? A farmer at
Oh
the
yeah, the whole family.
whole family farm.
Yeah, and Uncle Henry and Uncle Alex were all part of
okay.
the same trip before they went early out of the
Right.
So when they, when my father at the station heard of a trainload of Armenians were coming up from Adana, north, to Tarsus, and they were going to be executed. So he wired them, don't stop the train from coming up. And they turned around and they took action on my father for saying these things. But they loved my mother, my father, the Turkish people there in Tarsus. And they said, Mr. Dib, you better take our advice. You better get out of the country because your whole family will be executed, which means I would not be alive, my mother and my sister and so forth.
So this event happened in Tarsus, Turkey.
That's right. Tarsus, Turkey.
So what are you about to say?
Well, in general, the and I'm not going to call them published family histories, but the ones that are on the internet, they just give us a starting point, and I feel Dad has stuff here that he should add into these genealogies. But we get this, and I'm quoting now this from this: "We are indebted to Habib and Alexander. By a dint of hard work and tremendous effort, they managed to come to this country and enroll in the best schools, and what is more important, provided the instigation for all family to come to the United States."
They're using themselves. That's it themselves. Habib and what's the other?
Yeah, Alexander. That's
Yeah, they're talking about themselves.
no. This
No,
is from
this is
this is
Raymond's.
from Raymond. There.
Oh.
This is
Website.
so. I tell you the truth, like, not that they didn't have a good business sense and weren't well educated, but in terms of the history of the world, they're a period at the end of a sentence. That's all they are. I feel that Grandpa is much more than that, but because nobody knows the story,
You don't get credit.
nobody knows. Yeah, nobody knows, and I feel that I don't know how, why, where, or whatever, how we get him to get credit for this, but you hear frequently about the Armenian massacre that took place. That is a well-known historical fact, like World War I, like World War II, like the Mexican. You hear about these things, and our grandfather played a very important part in it.
Well, he played a part that saved lots of lives.
Yes,
I wonder
So there
if
was an
Armenians
incident.
Have any facts to back
Good
that
Well,
point.
up?
I'm not looking. I don't think we should be looking to justify the story. I mean, I think the story exists. I just think that in the family history,
No, maybe he has credit someplace else. I'm saying.
not in any family histories I've read.
Like Mom said, the
She's
Armenian
talking about-
history might recognize
Yeah,
that.
he'd be like a saint to them.
Well, this kind of stuff probably happened. I'm not sure. Not with the Nazis and the Jews, there was plenty of people who their lives were saved by an underground nurse, a looking the other way, safekeeping for, and all these people did incredible things, and in their family histories, these, your uncle, housed some Jews, and but in our family history, your dad never really got credit for anything, Dad. I mean, if I read,
My father and my mother that night packed up what they could carry, and they took the train to Messina, where the seaport is there, and then hopped the boat, into Cyprus and so forth. But the land was taken over by the government officials. And then they went to live with my uncles,
now you were 1 year old.
Huh?
You were 1 year old. You obviously have no memory of this at all, right?
And my brother was much older. He's the one that was killed.
Right.
And my sister's older than me.
Right. You were the youngest one at the time.
Huh?
You were the youngest one at the time. You were the youngest kid.
When he was, like I said, when he was playing ball in the street, I was about 4 years old, watched the game playing,
Yeah.
and he was hit by a car.
You have memories of that, Dad?
Huh?
Can you still remember that?
Yeah.
Because you were 4 at
I'm
that
4
time.
years old. 4 years old. Now I got stuff here. My father, and it's got his, I don't know what you got there, but here is his papers on what you have to, John Dibb's birth paper.
Wow.
So
You got your birth papers for your father, but we don't have them for you.
No, I don't know. I go through some of the other stuff. And here it is here, but it's all in Arabic.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you know of anybody knows.
Well, maybe we could track somebody down.